Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these conversations bring you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Season 5 of the podcast. Today's episode is an interview that I am very excited about. It is with my dear friend, Sam Valentine, who is the host of the One Broke Actress podcast. Now, if you are an actor, you probably have heard of her and her podcast before. She has been running this podcast for over 6 years, this platform, and she really has an incredible library of episodes where she covers all different aspects of the industry while also really focusing on being vulnerable and sharing her own struggles as an actor in the industry. Now, I'm sure that you think that you know Sam, but we really dive into some new and incredible aspects of Sam that she doesn't necessarily talk about on her podcast, and I'm just so honored that she has come onto More Than You See and used this as a platform to explore some of the things that she has been struggling with and some of the things that she has persevered through. We cover so many different aspects of her journey and mental health. We talk about maintaining a healthy mindset. We talk about expectations versus reality, living in the present, dealing with self-doubt and comparison, and maintaining a healthy relationship with food. She also reveals that she recently went on some medication in order to help her with her own mental health struggles, and she really talks about how it felt to make that decision and how it has changed her life for the better. Sam is someone who has a very public persona, but I think that we dive into some of her personal life in a really wonderful way on this episode. And I am just so honored that she has decided to share so much of herself with me and with the More Than You See community. And if you are not an actor or not in the industry, don't worry, this is still going to be a really important and helpful episode for you as well. I think that so many of the different things that I talk to creatives about are universal topics, and I'm sure that there are going to be things that you're going to take away from this episode that are going to influence you and help you think about things in potentially a different perspective and way. So without further ado, here's my interview with Sam Valentine. Hi, Sam. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you doing today?
It's a great question. I'd like to tell you I'm just fine, but I will tell you instead the honest answer, which
Great.
is it is like a little after 2. I have another podcast after this. I just came from 3 hours of Zoom meetings. And so I'm just so excited to talk to you with no expectations. That's what I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a little sore and tired and fatigued mid-December-y, but you know, I'm healthy, I'm fine, and I'm happy to be talking to you. So I feel very safe here.
Oh, good. Well, I'm excited to talk to you too. And I think, that was one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast, is that you as a podcaster are very good at asking other people questions. And I think that sometimes it's important to have that reflective time and to be able to just like drop in and be like, let me just share about how I'm doing. And I know that you do a really, really good job. If anyone is not following you, they should definitely follow you on social media. You do a really great job about like, revealing that internal self and what's going on. But even that is scripted, and I'm sure you have a team. So like, I'm sure that is still crafted in a way. And so I wanted to also just give you an opportunity to like have a safe space to just talk without any preconceived notions about what it's going to be. Because I think we all need that space.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to have you for that.
Yeah. I mean, as real as everything can be, there's still an element of acknowledging that you're on camera in some aspect.
Yep.
Like, I think my platform does a good job of me just being like, here's how I'm feeling. This is a safe space. I'm going to give it to you guys. But I am aware I'm on the internet. I am aware that I'm, projecting myself into people's lives for better or for worse. And I think the unfollow button is very underutilized.
100%.
But
I've
I
been
try
using that
to.
a lot lately.
It's really useful. I think it's very good for people to utilize the unfollow button. If you,
Yep.
if I also mute, I can't tell you how many people have been like, sometimes I don't want to think about acting. I mute your profile, and great. More powerful to you. I'd like to mute me sometimes, to be quite fucking honest.
For sure. No, definitely. I understand it's something my partner right now is doing a month off of social media. And I was like, oh, I would love that, because not only is it, my personal profiles, but I also, have a marketing company. So I manage social media for 5 other brands. So I can't get off social media. That's literally how I pay my bills. And so I think, establishing other guidelines and boundaries for ourselves are super, super important. And I know that you've been really good at that. And I want to jump though we're just going to ask some like hardball questions here, because, you've been doing this now for 6 years. How long have you been doing One Broke
Actress started in 2016. The podcast started in 2017. What's the math on that?
So 6 years. Okay, great.
Long time. Yeah.
6, almost 7 years. And so, obviously I want to talk about expectations and then reality, and how, like we all go into these things thinking that it's going to be something, and then it turns out to not be what we think it's going to be. And I just, especially right now, we're recording this December 12th. So as the year's wrapping up, this is going to air in January. But I'm just curious how you reflect on yourself and then continue pushing forward and continue going when expectations are not, manifesting the way that you want them to be. How do you handle that?
I think my whole life has been not what I pictured, but more than I could have ever asked for. I, moved around a lot growing up. I always tried to be something other than myself. I always tried to study other people and figure out what to do with myself and how I fit into circumstances. I didn't realize that at the time that what I was doing was learning to read a room and learning to assess social situations and learning to read people's energies. And that has served my career so well in so many ways, not just my acting career, but also my businesses. And, I learned those lessons in a way that I didn't want to learn them. I didn't want to move all the time. I would get comfortable somewhere, and my dad would come home and we'd sit on the couch, and we knew that every time we sat on the couch as a family, and he'd go, well, and mom and dad would sit on this couch and we would sit on this couch. And we just knew, I knew that meant like we're moving again. And it wasn't, I still had a good childhood. My parents are awesome, amazing people, supportive, I couldn't have been luckier. But it was not what I wanted. It was not what I pictured. I ended up going to a school I didn't want to go to. I originally wanted to go to University of Illinois. I auditioned for the theater program and got a big no from them. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like figuring out acting. I had just done it in high school. And same thing with moving to LA. I thought, fine, I'm going to surprise everyone. Like no one has any idea what's coming. And then I got here and I had no idea how to get an audition. I had no idea. This was 2012. There wasn't podcasts about this. There wasn't websites. There was nobody to guide you except for expensive acting teachers. And, I was very lost. People were very gatekeepy, and nothing ever felt like it was supposed to. And there was a lot of turmoil that I had to deal with in terms of myself, because my coping mechanisms are control. And I managed to pick the career that has almost none unless you make your own work. And so I controlled the things I could. That was my way of dealing with it. My way of self-assessment was, well, I can't handle, who books me in something. I can't handle what agent signs me. I can't even handle like how I get in the jobs I'm getting. But what I can handle is, how much training can I do? Okay, great. I need to be the best at everything. Okay, great. How thin can I be? How much can I look like everyone I see on TV? How much, and that was unfortunately the way I dealt with the fact that nothing looked like I wanted it to. I thought I could control it until it did. And I think that was what we were sold a lot, was that you got to work harder than everyone else. You got to want it more. You got to, all those horrific sayings. I believed them for a long time, and I think I'm just now getting to the point of my life where I'm a little I'm tired. I'm mid-30s. I've learned so much. I have a life I actually really love, even though it's not what I expected. But I've turned all of those obstacles into, all right, well, if that isn't the way, then let's talk about how broken that system is. And now I have a platform where I talk about it. Okay, great. Well, I did something really wrong, it feels like, in my career. Great. Well, I'm going to tell that story on the podcast. I had an agent who told me I was the worst human being in the world. Great. I'm going to talk about what that felt like, because now my control is different. It's like I can control. It's still the same thing. I'm still using the same coping mechanism.
For sure.
I'm just doing it in a different way, where I'm presenting my narrative of there's no longer mistakes. There's just better content. And in sharing that along the way, it has given me a life I nowhere near expected, but I could not ask for more. I love the fact that I get to talk about acting to actors all the time. I love the community I've accidentally built. I love, my jobs. They work in podcasts and with actors. It was all a complete accident, and everything just compiled on each other. And if I would have stopped and overanalyzed it for too long, I might have panicked.
Yeah, 100%. I think that we're very similar people. I think for me, I'm also very much in control freak when it comes to my career. And for me, it's been creating my own content and, creating my own work. And I think for me, the difficulty now is making sure that me and my career is at its core, and that I'm not just giving of myself to everyone else. So it's really one of those things that when I get approached for projects now, I'm asking myself, is this something that's going to really benefit me financially, or benefit my acting career, or really light me up? And if it's not one of those things, then I have to pass on it, because we only have limited time. And it's definitely something where it's in your also my mid-30s, where I'm just I just don't have time for bullshit. And my partner has 2 kids, so I've got 2 kids 50% of the time, and so my time is so limited. But I think that that's when push comes to shove, that's when things really start to thrive. And I also, really want to highlight the focus and what you mentioned about the life that you have right now is great. And that's something that cannot be undervalued, especially coming off of the strike and the SAG after contract and all of these, legitimate fears that everyone has with AI, no matter, where anyone voted. I think that our concerns about that at their core are still founded. And so, I think that it's so wonderful to hear you talk about your personal life, because I think that we need to focus on the fact that if what we're doing on a daily basis is not making us happy, then what are we doing it for? Because we can't dream about, we can't live for the future. We have to live for what's going on right now.
Yeah. Which is a lot easier to say now than when I was in my early 20s and I was
100%
broke as shit, and I didn't have, my life is good now, because if I had to fly out of the country tomorrow, I could do it and barely make a dent in my savings account. That is that to me is wealth. I feel like I'm so wealthy.
Yep.
Could I have more money? Could I have a house one day? Absolutely. Is that in the cards? I don't know. But But when I was in my early 20s and I would just move to LA, I am privileged because I have if I ever called my parents and said, "Hi, I can't buy food," they would be like, "Great, here's money." I never did that because I am a very proud, very stubborn person. And to me, that meant that I was losing. To some people, that looks very different. They're like, yeah, why wouldn't I use my resources? And I also respect that game. But
100%.
when, you couldn't have told me at that age that to live in the present. Because I was like, well, the present fucking sucks.
Right.
I have to live for the future, because why else am I doing this? I'm sleeping on a futon and I live in someone's tool shed in their backyard. So I don't know if I could be this confident and sit here and say that when I was 22 years old and literally living in a tool shed in Hollywood. It was a struggle, but I still managed to have fun. I'm still a glass half full kind of gal most of the time. And I can still think of like some fun stuff I did at that age, and the ways that my friends and I finagled staying in someone's parents' sister's place in San Diego, and we felt like we were on cloud nine, and it was like
100%.
this shitty house on a golf course.
Yeah.
But we just find a way. And now, if you know, look back, I had a lot of fun, but I would not believe the same sentiment coming from myself back then.
For sure. Well, I think that, something that I realized about myself when I moved to LA, also, I mean, you moved earlier than me, but I moved when I was 27. And I knew for myself that it was so important for me to have my finances be front and center, because I knew that if I didn't know where my next, that I wasn't going to be able to cover whatever. Like, I have so much respect for friends of mine that were able to live in their cars. I personally know that I could not do that. I could not sustain myself doing that. And so that was something that also control. I was like, great, I'm going to take care of my finances and put that front and center. And, but it's all about that balancing act. Of course, with all of this being said, I'm sure that there's some people who look at you and look at like this, what you're building and all of these things. And I'm sure that you think about this yourself, where it's like, why am I not further along? Because I think about that myself as well. So when those dark spirals come, how do you pull yourself out of them? And like, what do you tell yourself when you're like, well, shit, I should be further than I am?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I know people think of it when they think of me too, which is crazy to me, because in my head, I've not gotten nearly anywhere where I want to go in terms of my acting career. When I catch myself thinking things like that, and it is easier now, I will say, at this age, I've done a lot of work in my mental health. I've done a lot of work with prescribers and things like that. And when I catch myself in those times, one, it probably means it's like the 4 days before my period, because that's when I get like my emotional sense is at a 10 and nothing has to make sense. And it's just a mess inside of my brain. And tracking my cycle really started to make a huge difference in my life. And so I can identify, I'm like, oh, this is just one of those days.
100%.
But I realize that when I'm getting like that, I'm focusing on one tiny area of my life. When I say, oh, I should be, it happened to me the other week. I talked really openly on my Instagram stories because I was hit with such a wave of jealousy because I saw someone who moved to this town just a few years ago. And I said, I'd use this term, and I don't think it's a legitimate term, but whatever. They have lapped me in terms of career. They have double or triple my credits.
It was great.
Yeah. And we all know that feeling. It's like they have double or triple my credits. And they were like, I didn't get to share this during the strike, but here's all the stuff that came out. And I was like, and especially because I talk about acting all day long, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what? Am I just not actually good? And I've convinced myself otherwise. Am I not actually, is this a pipe dream? Am I missing something somebody else has? Do they have a bet? It's like, what is it? What is it? Headshots? Is it real? Is it just credits? Is it like a trend in casting? Like, what am I missing? And I had to pull myself out of it because, one, thank God I still feel that way, because there was parts of the past year where I was like, do I love acting? Do I 100%. Miss this? And it was a nice reminder. You love it so much. You love it so much you're willing to get hurt by it, and you're willing to feel your feelings for it. Like, that's a real relationship.
Yep.
So that was a very good reminder to me. And two, I didn't necessarily want what this person had. I, at the time, wanted street cred. And that is when I have to be like, oh, okay, I don't necessarily want to work those exact jobs. I want to be able to share with people, hey, I promise everything I'm telling you about being patient, having a full life, all these things, they're real because I'm also working. Right. And I just wanted to be on set. And so of those things, there's very little I can control. But what I can do is zoom out and see what I'm focusing on is like 2% of me being a human, which is that one of the many jobs that I do that might not be going as well as I'd like it to. Okay, great. What else do I have? And not to say that this person doesn't, but what do I just have? Because if I would have had a different career, I definitely wouldn't have had my husband. Right. We met when I was the front desk girl at the gym because I was working there to get a free membership. Right. Like, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't have One Broke Actress, which is the platform that I spend my entire day thinking about working for, doing stuff for. And I get messages from actors all the time that are like, I didn't quit because of you. I made a production company because of you. I ended up making this movie with someone you saw who you had on the podcast because I connected with them. And I'm like,
right.
Like, that wouldn't have happened if I would have been ahead or gotten the career that this girl got. And
Absolutely.
maybe there's a world in which I'm going to have a high later on in my career, and it's going to be followed by a low. And this is part of my prep. This is part of me
1000%.
knowing how to live, right? In the in-betweens. And we know the in-betweens are required. So if we know it's coming, how do I deal with it now before the fall from the top is higher? So I'm like practicing that now to know that I can do it. Because we all know muscle memory is so real. Like, I can do anything because I used to like sleep on the ground as a summer camp counselor and like, hike 12 miles a day and whatever. So, this is like my practice. This is like the thickening of my skin. And that's what I have to tell myself. There's so much more going on than just that thing. And I have so much more that I don't even know is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to highlight a couple things. Like, first of all, you talking about the importance of feeling the like despair when it comes to your career, because that brought up the happiness and the hope and the attachment that you still have to that. Like, I think that that's something so much that we don't give ourselves enough credit for, is like the importance of feeling that despair and like the saddest parts of your emotions, because then when you succeed, you just feel even better. Like, I definitely think that, we strive as people, or what we should strive as people, is to have that foundation so that we're kind of skating neutral and like able to function and like be happy and be just like neutral in our lives. But like, it is so important to still feel those emotions when those things come in, because then we're able to ride out the storm. And I want to, highlight again what you were saying similarly, where I was doing some reflecting this morning about how I feel like this last year for me has really been a rebuild. Like, I mentioned to you before we got on the podcast, like, I moved this year. I moved in with my partner. He has 2 kids. I lost my dog. I had some major health stuff that I'm going to be talking about on the podcast actually next season. And so it's been a wild year for me as far as rebuilding a foundation. And the way that I was able to tackle all of the shit that I went through this year, I was like, oh, doesn't matter what comes now. Like, it doesn't matter what job I get or don't get, or you get signed to a movie and then you get dropped to like, all of that kind of stuff is so superfluous and like just minimal in comparison to what I went through this year, that I'm like, bring it on, world. Like, whatever you're going to hit me with, like, I'm ready. And I think that it's so important for us to do those reflections, like, not just on the positive things that happened in this year, but like the negative things, and then how you handle them. Because that just shows you also like where you need to work on it. Because it's like, if you had some kind of situation and you're like, I didn't handle that as best as I would like to in the future, it's so important to be able to check in with yourself and be like, how can I do that differently next year? It's so key.
Yeah, and I think it also shows you the things you maybe don't need to work on, because we're such like type A fixers.
Yeah.
So many creatives. And then just as humans in general, right? Like, our brains are built to be like problem and solved, problem and solved, problem and solved. Like, the things that keep me up at night are not things that are fixed. It's things that like my brain invented. Like, I think that person hates me now, or like, why didn't I ever change the light bulb? And I think figuring out the things that you can just like let ride are really, really nice. I didn't have the part of this year I didn't have necessarily like fitness needs, because I have like, I do some competitive like fitness training stuff at the end of the year but because of that, I did not need to put on my daily to-do list like fit in a workout. Like, I just don't need to write on my to-do list, brush my teeth, because I'm gonna do it. Like, it's not everything needs to be worked on and perfected all of the time. And I think it's such a go-to for us to make sure we have everything on lock and the list and taken care of. And there are some things that you all did very, very well in 2023 that you maybe don't need to focus as much energy on, because they can kind of simmer in the background now. It's just a part of, like,
they're just habits.
Yeah, as a part of your, neural synapses or whatever.
Yep.
What is the word? What is the word? Neural pathways. Yes,
the
that's it.
pathways. Yeah, for sure. I want to ask, you mentioned on one of your podcasts about how you do food prep. And, you've talked very openly on the podcast before about having, a past with eating disorder. And I'm just wondering how you don't over control your eating when it comes to meal prep, and still keeping in mind, obviously, nourishing yourself and keeping yourself as healthy as possible, but like just being aware that that is something that could potentially creep in at any moment, because something like that is always something that can come back and be part of our lives if we let it.
Yeah, it's something I always have to keep myself in check on. The meal prep is just, honestly, we make large batches. My husband and I make large batches of lots of things on Sunday or Monday. We make a lot of chicken, a lot of rice, a lot of potatoes, sometimes roasted vegetables. Like, we just make a lot of these things so they're easy grab and go. Like, toss them with lettuce. Any of those things combined in lettuce to me is a salad. I don't care what the ingredients are.
Kitchen sink salad is like my favorite meal.
It's the best.
It's always
it's
what
the best.
I do. Yeah.
I had leftover pasta from last night with like tomatoes and zucchini and stuff, and I tossed it on some lettuce, tossed it with some chicken. I was like, that's an Italian salad.
That was me. I had curry and Chinese from this weekend, 2 different restaurants, put it all together on a salad. It was perfect.
It's a salad. Yeah. I don't care what's on it. It's the bed of lettuce and then like a salad. So that's the extent of meal prepping. I no longer prep like portion sizes, because that is something that went arm in arm with my need to know exactly what was coming in terms of food. Right. And that is something I've had to actively work against. In the depth of my eating issues, it wasn't that I had perfect control, is that I lost complete control. And I was, there's a specific moment that I wouldn't call like rock bottom, but it was like a very eye-opening moment where I was like 31, and I was standing in the middle of my kitchen in the morning, and I burst into tears because I had no idea what to eat for breakfast because, intermittent fasting. I shouldn't eat anything yet. Right. Oh, maybe I should have just coffee. Wait, can I have coffee with cream? No, wait, probably not cream, like almond milk. I don't really like coffee with almond milk. Okay, what if I just had a piece of fruit? Was fruit going to be straight sugar? Okay, what if I just have egg whites? Is that going to slow down my metabolism? Like, I had a full-on fucking panic attack about picking out an item to eat for breakfast and the order in which I should eat it.
Yeah.
And I pictured myself at 75, 85 doing the same thing. I was like, no. This has got to stop. I'm not going to fix myself by being smaller, and I'm not going to fix my thoughts about food by making them into rules.
Yep.
And after a long time I've jumped around therapists multiple times because I had some who didn't really understand the acting part of it. And that was a whole nother level for me to say, like, this, my body is part of my business. So it does matter how I feel and how I look. It's not just about getting rid of the disorder. And I had some therapists who didn't necessarily understand that. And they were like, maybe acting's not for you. And I was like, you're not for me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. But, everything really changed. To be quite honest, I haven't talked about this super openly yet, but I plan on it. So I can definitely talk about it with you. I started my first prescription anti-anxiety medication this year. And I was never told that was an option for dealing with an eating disorder before. No one ever told me that drugs like Prozac are actually specifically made and prescribed to people who have eating disorders to slow the anxiety of controlling it all. Right. And I thought that it was, I had a full mental breakdown because I was like, wait. What if my anxiety is my edge? Word for word, I said that to a psychiatrist. And they were like, what if it's not?
Right.
So I said, okay, sure, we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And it's changed my whole life. I've never
Yeah.
thought about food less, and I've never taken care of myself more. It doesn't mean I don't backslide. It doesn't mean I don't have days where there are thoughts, you know, especially in training for this event I have coming up. I need to eat a lot of food to be able to do the things I'm doing. And that has fucked with me a little bit. It has been like a whole, and I don't want to measure. I don't want to, the worth of maybe changing my body just like a teensy bit to me is not worth how hard I've worked to understand my hunger and fullness cues.
For sure.
And so that to me is like, I'm not willing to go there right now, but it's been a huge process. And I invited my husband into it. So he knows, you know, so much about it. And, you know, even the other day I was like, hey, I'm having a lot of body thoughts and I want to talk to you about them. And he's like, okay, whatever you need. And we talked it through. And by the next day I felt so much better because I wasn't alone in this like echo chamber.
Yep.
And that helped a lot. I don't have a specific person I'm seeing right now, but it's been a whirlwind, and I don't think it will ever go away completely because I've chosen a life on camera, whether it's my cell phone on social media or whether it's on camera for an acting job. But I like the place I'm at right now where I feel as though I've found a middle ground that food is awesome and it's fuel. It can be both.
Yep.
And you know, this is the first time I'm going to go through the holiday season on anti-anxiety medication. And so that will be a whole different bag of worms to see how that goes. But
yeah,
I'm cautiously optimistic. I feel very, very good. And I do feel like I've also still had to utilize different mechanisms and control coping things that are less about figuring out a regimen and more about being open. And that's my long-winded explanation of where I'm at with it right now. So I can easily make a bunch of food, and then when I'm hungry for it, I eat it. When I'm not, I don't. Some days I eat 6 meals. Yeah. Some days I eat 2. And there's no rhyme or reason. You know, tracking my cycle once again made a big difference. I'm like, oh man, in the 5 days before my period, I want to house food. I probably eat more than a lot of the men listening to this podcast. I eat a lot, but I do a lot of training, and I really know, like, I'm really good at listening to my hunger and fullness cues, and that's changed. Man, there's a lot of free space you can find in your brain when you stop thinking about food all the time. If you're like thinking that it helps you, I promise you, it does not.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that, like, I want to highlight a few things. Like, number one, the fact that you were able to see a psychiatrist in order to talk about these things. And you mentioned that, like, you're not necessarily seeing that psychiatrist ongoing. And that's something I think that people don't realize when it comes to medication, is that it isn't like you need to see a psychiatrist and now it's going to be an ongoing cost that you're seeing on top of potentially a talk therapist. Like, that's not what it is. Like, a therapist is specifically a doctor that you can see, that you would have a session with or multiple sessions with in order to talk about what is going on. It's definitely, you know, very similar to a therapist, but the psychiatrist is specifically going to help diagnose, just like any other something else going on in your body. And then it's really up to the person taking the medication to check in with themselves and to have that self-awareness and be like, is this working? Is this not? You know, and like, I had someone on the podcast last season she's amazing. She's been on the podcast twice. Her name's Shelly. And she talks about how she was on medication and then during the pandemic decided to go off of it. And she talks about how that was a terrible idea, but how that was something that, like, she needed to go through that journey herself in order to check in with herself, have more self-awareness about, like, what was going on. And then now she's on a different dosage and stuff than she was before. But, like, it was definitely something where, like, we have to have agency over ourselves. And when we don't, that's when it's so important to, like, get those resources, get that assistance, rely on our partners, rely on our friends and our community in order to be like, hey, I can't control my thoughts on this anymore. I need to talk through this, or I need to get, you know, some more professional help. And, you know, one thing that I really appreciate and love about your relationship with Caleb that you talk about so openly on the podcast is how you guys are so respectful of each other's time, but also so open and 100% honest about how you're doing. I think that that's, or how you're both doing. Obviously, we don't hear from him as much, but
for the better, he'd be so shy.
But I think that that's like, I heard you mention on your podcast once about, just being like, Caleb, I'm like, I mean, this is obviously, I'm not directly quoting you, but you're basically like, Caleb, I'm feeling super shitty today. Like, I'm going to be a total bitch and like, whatever, and I was like, good for you. Good for you for, again, having that self-awareness and being able to communicate that with people.
That's, we think of things like mental disorders and issues, and that to me stems to eating disorders as though it's like the worst thing ever. But my self-awareness because of my eating disorder is high. And it might have stemmed from a place of negativity, but now I can utilize it for other things. And it's really easy to look at something like that and think it just hampered me. And although it did not serve me very well in my life, I do think it's taught me so much. And I had to learn, I learned about health and nutrition from a very young age. I got a little too far down that rabbit hole, but it's not something that I think that I will ever unthink about. And I think that does behoove me in some ways. And the way I am self-aware does behoove me in some ways. And the way I've learned that if I just tell people exactly what I need, like before you and I started, I was like, is there any way we can be out by 3? My next meeting is not till 3:30, but I need to lay on the ground and close my eyes for 20 minutes before I start my next Zoom. And I know that about myself, so I can show up fully. And learning that and being able to know where your personal boundaries are, even as small as like, I am not myself today, and please don't judge me for it. That releases other people of having to worry about you too, or having to judge, or having to take things too seriously. And, if you told me when we started this podcast, hey, I'm feeling off today, I had some family emergency, I would be like, great, I'm not going to overinterpret any way she talks to me. I'm going to try and take the mic as much as possible. Maybe she needs a break. Like over communication is so good. I think more people should do it.
For sure. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that we don't want to be burdensome on others, but we don't realize that like by oversharing, or by sharing our, true selves, it actually is. I really like your comment about how it's taking the burden off of them so that they don't feel like they're going to overanalyze something. I think that's really, really key. And I think that, nutrition and eating disorder stuff, just like I said, I'm going to go into this more in the podcast next season, but like my health stuff that I've been dealing with for the last like 5 months has made me also so aware of my weight and my body. And I definitely, and it's all because of women and women's bodies and how we hold things and how, just like our cycles and all of that kind of stuff. And it has made me so aware, and also so aware of like what I eat and how it makes me feel. And I think that is something that we all should have an awareness of like, when I eat sugar, it doesn't make me feel good. Or when I eat this kind of sugar, it doesn't make me feel good. Or when I eat whatever, because it's so interesting, because once I was listening to something and they were talking about how, everyone's always like, eat brown rice is better for you, like, oh, whatever. And this person, I know, so do I. And this,
can we just call a spade? Brown rice blows.
Yes, 100%. And it was something where like, I was listening to this nutritionist and they were talking about how like, that's actually completely false. And how like we believe all of these things. We have, and again, I think it's one of those things where we're constantly looking for outside affirmations and about like what we're doing is right. And like what we're doing is the perfect thing for ourselves or for others or whatever. And like, it's really about just, coming back to ourselves and being like, what feels good to me right now? And like, that's it. That's all we can really focus on. For our lives, supporting ourselves and supporting others in our community. Thank you so much for being so open about that, because I think that's really important. What is your favorite comfort TV show or movie?
Anything Real Housewives, particularly the new season of New York.
That's awesome. What has been your favorite age so far?
Oh, that's such a good question. 32 was great. I feel like 35 is better.
Do you like to learn by watching or learn by doing?
Doing.
Would you rather travel to the past or to the future?
God, that's such a hard question. Probably the past, so I can feel slightly superior.
Awesome. And then final question, what is one trait that you love about yourself?
I love my empathy. I think it makes me a better actor and a better human walking through the world to think that everyone's just trying their best.
I have the last few questions for you. One thing is, with More Than You See, it's really about the masks that we wear and the things that is going on internally. And I'm wondering if you have any internal struggles or any masks that you currently would like to discuss, anything that's going on that maybe you don't necessarily like sharing, but it's something that you are aware of and that you are working on trying to take that mask off.
Oh, I love this. Wow, I could talk about this forever, I think. Number one, I'm very scared I'm not actually a good actor. Maybe I just have good hair. It's like a deep concern.
Huh?
No, but really. So
it's good to vocalize those things because we all have those.
Yeah, I think
and
that
you do have excellent hair. So
thank you so much. I do, and I'm also terrified if I ever lost it for any reason that I would no longer consider myself pretty, which is a whole nother bag of worms of what you consider attractive about yourself. 100%. Maybe I'm just fooling everyone. I only have good hair and the rest of it's shit. I don't know. Those are things that the thoughts that we have to talk ourselves down from every day.
Yeah, of course.
But because I talk to actors so much and I talk about acting all of the time and this career, and although I don't coach acting, if you're going to coach an audition, you go to someone else. It's not something I do. I help people with their mindset. I help people with their day-to-day life. I help people regulate having a work-life balance, helping them pick their headshots. That's more what I do in our community. Yep. The membership, we do a lot of that as well. But a part of me always wonders, am I not doing enough for my acting career? If that thought sits in my head every single day. Yep. Every single day. And I've been doing this for 12 years professionally, and before that 4 years in college for a degree. And I wonder if I need to work harder, find a new coach, get new headshots, film my own stuff. I think about it every single day. Yep. Not a day goes by that I don't wonder if I'm working hard enough for my career, or if I need to do a self-tape just to stay in practice, which is not, to me, doesn't really behoove great practice necessarily. For me personally, it kind of can become an endless feedback loop of I'm doing this for me. And then did I get anything out of that? Other than just picking up sides, should I read a script? Did I need to watch this particular movie? What counts as acting work? Have I done enough? Am I doing enough? Does 12 years in this career even count for anything? Should I sign up for another class? I am working very hard to slow those thoughts. And I already picked my little phrase of the year, word of the year next year is let's see. Let's just see. Because I am one to get ahead of checking boxes. So I'm known to, for next year, I don't have any acting classes signed up. So I should do improv, and then I'll sign up for this class. And then I have a plan of what I'm doing and when, just in order to consistently feel like an actor. But the opportunities from the last year have kind of presented themselves in different ways. Classes I didn't know I wanted to take would be offered, or someone would recommend someone to me and I would do a coaching session with them. I'm also of the belief that really watching amazing old school movies, I have a list from my agency, from my management company, they call film school, and it's 100 plus movies I think every actor should see. I'm working my way through that right now, and I love reading scripts. I'm always down to read with my friends. I work auditions with my partner Gabrielle Binloss all the time. Acting is just a part of my life right now, and I think I'm forcing it to come in a way that it's not necessarily needing to be forced. Yep. But then I doubt myself that maybe that means I'm not working hard enough. Should it be more of a struggle? Should I push harder up against this? And that's a mask I would like to leave behind. I'm just not entirely sure how to do it yet.
Yeah. something that I promised myself a couple of years ago, because I used to have the exact same thing where I would like sign up for all of these classes, and I promised myself a couple of years ago that I wasn't going to sign up for any classes. I was like, no acting classes, no scene study, no whatever. And instead, what it meant was that because I still craved working on my craft, I did end up discovering all of these other ways that I would work on my craft that were paid back and like so much better than what I was necessarily getting in class. I have to say that like that also comes from having had a foundation. Like, I have done scene study classes. I've done a lot of training before. So it's not like we're definitely not saying like, come to LA and be like, nothing, unless that works for you,
I tried it.
Like,
let me tell you, it did not work.
Right. But I mean, like, it's one of those things where like, I think that we're constantly, again, where we just want to like follow a specific path, where we get into something and we're like, okay, this is what someone says to do. This is what Sam on One Broke Actress is doing. So therefore I'm going to do it. And it's like, but it's not what works for you. And I think that that was why, like, me telling myself like, nope, you're not doing any classes was the best promise that I've made to myself. And it's something where now, I think I did that 2 years ago. Now I'm like, I could maybe get into a class, but also I'm going to take ballet next semester 2 days a week. So like, I'm really excited about getting back into my body in that way. And I just think that, it's important to remind ourselves that there's no one path, and whatever lights you up. And like, I've been thinking a lot about the importance of being in a creative state of mind. So it's not just like, and the final question that I have for you is about managing your time between, all of your practices and your businesses and the podcast and being a wife and, acting and all of these things. And I'll just say that like, for me, I have very similar struggles as far as like boundaries. And something that I found in the last couple months that has been really beneficial for me is the fact that like, when I just reminding myself what it feels like when I'm creative and when I'm really excited about something. Like, I just started producing a new doc a couple weeks ago, and I'm really excited about what we're doing there. And just sitting in that excitement and reminding myself of that is because for me, I'm really bad at doing my jobs and like doing my marketing work and like, just focusing on that and forgetting or putting everything else secondary. And so just reminding myself, like, this is what it feels like to be creative, and like, this is wonderful and it lights me up. And like, that is kind of driving me into each creative session. And that's like helping my writing. It's helping so many different things. But for you, how do you find that balance? And I'm sure that you struggle with it. But where are you at right now with that?
I don't think balance is possible. I don't think it exists. I don't think anytime. Yeah, I mean, God, you're dealing with children now, and that's a whole another thing in the wrench. I cannot even imagine. We have so much going on inside of this house. Between my husband's in and out all day long. He does not work a 9 to 5. He goes trains 2 clients, and he comes back, and then he eats, then he goes and trains a client, and then he comes back, and then it's chaos in here. We have 3 senior rescue dogs. Like, I'm always doing something different. He was like, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "Well, I have a 2-hour acting class, and then I have 2 interviews, but then I have to get this done." And he was like, "Okay, we'll just like turn on your tap light so I know when to come in and when to not." I don't think balance is possible because anytime you give energy to something, you have to take it away from something else. So in the weeks when I'm the craziest, that's when I will tell him, "Hey, I will not be talking to you probably on Tuesday and Thursday because I have 9 meetings between those 2 days. And can you do dinner those nights?" Because he's so good about, he would run this house if it wasn't for me. Like, he would do all the chores, all the things, all of that. And like, the one thing I do consistently is I cook dinner because I'm home. And I love it. It gives me a hard stop at the end of the day. That is one of the few things that I've like really put in place, is that I really don't do nighttime work. I start to shut down when the sun sets. I really hate working at night. It makes me feel like I'm like grinding, which I fucking hate the grind. I would rather get up at 5 a.m. than go to bed at 3 a.m. It's just not my style. And I'm very, very outright when I have those weeks, and he will take over dinner for those nights or whatever it is. And, I have to be really clear, like, I'm stressed about these things. I'm not going to be great this week. What can I give you this weekend, attention wise? Like, because his love language is quality time. And I don't always have that to give, especially even though I work at home. The time I'm here is not always quality because I'm like 3 sheets to the wind all the time. I'll literally start a conversation and he'll come in and he's like, what do you say? And I'm like, I'm talking to Instagram stories. I'm not talking to you right now.
Right.
So I think it's not possible. Right. I think when I'm killing it in this year, I absolutely killed it in my side work. I say side work as though they're small jobs. I own a podcast production company. I own our online community, the membership, and I own One Broke Actress. And between the three of them, we slayed this year. We did such good work for amazing people. And I made more money in my businesses than I ever thought I could without my acting career functioning. And you know what? It's only happened because of the strike. It only happened because I had so much energy to give to that side of the world. Next year, my businesses, especially, because the podcast business takes me so much in terms of like kind of out of the acting world, it might get a little bit less attention. But I'm hoping that the systems we put in place this year will kind of run themselves next year. I hired a lot of people. It's very scary. It's exhausting, but I love it. Sure. I have to put ramifications on my time in terms of I try to take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays specifically. And then I try to leave Monday, Wednesday, Friday free-ish. And then they're kind of layover. So if I need to go to a doctor, if I need to read someone's audition, if I need to whatever, like those days get pushed into those. And then Monday I like a slow roll because I hate starting the week feeling like I need to be somewhere for someone else. I want to get my shit done. Yeah. Those are kind of the only ramifications I really have in place at this time. I try not to work on the weekends, although that falters occasionally. And I just try to keep up. I think next year when auditions come back with the place all my businesses are, it's going to be a very telling thing to see what systems I put in place that work. I'm all about automations. If you can put something in Zapier, if you can put something in Slack and like connect it to Notion and like as concise as I can be with all of my things, so I don't have to be the middleman of all my projects. And the last thing I'll say on that is that you mentioned like finding creativity in all of it. Someone asked me recently, like, what do you, like when you're not doing acting, like when do you feel creative though? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really think about it. And I got out of a podcast meeting last week with one of my clients and we had delved into her plans for this coming year. And we had gotten really juicy details on like what kind of episodes, the type of guests, how we can use those episodes and put them on social media and like the different types of things we can do. And I was lit the fuck up. I was so excited because I had so many ideas and thoughts about what they can create with it. And even though it wasn't for me, I left feeling like I was on cloud 9 because I helped someone, because I had ideas, because I contributed, because I was using my creative brain. It just wasn't in the way that, like we had talked about at the beginning of the call, I had pictured it. And I think that that's okay too. I think that you can 100%. Get joy and creativity from your other things as well. And in fact, if you can find those there, dig in, because being on set doesn't always feel creative. It doesn't 100%. Always feel like you think it. So get it wherever you can get it, and know that the balance to me is not a thing. And if you can roll with that and accept it and try to back end it or front end it later, that to me is where you can find that ease and flow.
Absolutely. I mean, manifesting, I think, truly is all about the feeling. It's about pulling a feeling towards you. It's not necessarily about pulling a specific job, a specific career. It's really about like how you want to live your life and how that life is going to make you feel. And by focusing on that creative, you're just going to constantly bring more of that creative into you. Love that. Thank you so much for being here, Sam. I really, really appreciate it. And plug yourself, plug all of the things. Where can people find you, find the membership, find everything?
Yes. Well, if you're someone who loves podcasting and you're into podcasting and you've always wanted to start your own podcast, I do all of those different things at Fast Forward Productions. And the women are speaking on Instagram, but the website is fastforwardproductions.com. fastforwardproduction.com. And that's my podcast production company. I only hire actors. So we have a project manager and a couple editors and a VA who all work under us in different tiers of different people's podcasts. We can help get you started. We can keep you going. We do a lot of different services from small price to big price. And I love that business with my whole heart. It's like my little baby. One Broke Actress is One Broke Actress everywhere on roughly every platform, I think, except Twitter or X or whatever. That's YouTube, that's podcasting, that's Instagram, that's sometimes TikTok, and that's content, daily life, actor stuff, me and other people sometimes. The membership is my online community. If you want more, if you feel like you don't have an actor community, we do so much more than just acting on there. It's constant office hours. We do study halls so you can actively get your work done. We have guest spots. We have a library of content on there. It's a never-ending stream. And there's 10,000 other things I do, but if you want them, just shoot us an email and at assistant@onebrokeactress.com and she'll take care of you.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it. So, what did you think? What did you take away from this episode? I am very curious what you learned about yourself and about Sam. Please feel free to reach out to me on social media, tag Sam and myself in your stories or however you want to potentially share your thoughts and feedback about this episode. I really found some interesting takeaways in this episode as far as, you know, my own understanding of expectations versus reality, my own understandings of being jealous and how that can affect myself and my mental health. And I think that this is an interview that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. I want to have a special shout out and thank you to Katra Parkman, who is my wonderful friend and editor of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you. And a special thanks to Ryan Ricks, who composed the intro and outro music for this podcast. Please be kind to yourself this week. Things are hard, and I want you to remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you in a few weeks.